The 80s that I remember while growing up, I doubt anyone would have picked up the tabla here. You know, the youngsters and everyone wanted a guitar, cool, Satan, that kind of stuff.
I remember those days.
Hi, I'm Rishu Singh, event promoter with my own company Anoushka.com, an absolute fan of the Indian independent music scene, otherwise known as the indie scene. Music, films, culture, I like checking out all of it. I'm going to be bringing you along on the ride, where you watch me speak to my favorite indie musicians, bands, artists and people who decide to do things a little differently, just like me.
Hi, I'm Rishu Singh and this is the last episode of The Ride for this season, and I couldn't have asked for a better guest today. He's one of the pioneers of the Asian underground and global fusion sounds, putting India on the map world over. Please say hello to Karsh Kale, joining me on The Ride today. Back when Indian indie wasn't the force to be reckoned with it is today, a few names helped put non-mainstream Indian music on the global map, a big one of those being Karsh Kale. Exploring new territory in every way, he's gone on to become one of the most important names in the scene today, even getting a name check from the President of the United States. Here's to meeting the man on this very special episode of The Ride. How's it going, Karsh? What's happening these days?
Right now, I'm over here working on some more music for the album I'm going to be releasing next year.
Okay.
Kind of trying to finish that stuff before the festival season starts.
I want to find out about your childhood. You were a child growing up in the US. How did you even think about Indian classical music? How did that come about?
Well, I think that, first and foremost, I was exposed to a lot of music growing up. Some of my first memories are musical. The car rides were filled with everything from classical music to old film songs to, and of course having my older brother and older sister, the radio, pop music, kind of the music that was happening in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
So all that stuff was kind of very informative. And I always had an inclination towards drums and rhythm. So my father kind of started to expose me to more and more classical tabla.
Okay.
And eventually took me to see Zakir Hussain.
But all the research that I've read says that you aren't a trained classical tabla player. How does that happen? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I think that when someone says you're not trained, that just means you haven't sat in front of a formal guru.
Right.
There's different ways of immersing yourself in the art form, especially if you decide that you want to do something different, And I think that at a young age, I knew that whatever it was that was inspiring me, whether it was somebody like Stevie Wonder or someone like Zakir Hussain or bands like Led Zeppelin, I knew that I didn't want to just simply become them or be in the pursuit to become them.
Right.
What was inspiring me was that they were out of the box, that they changed the game, that they changed the rules in order to exist. And so that was what was more inspiring to me than anything else.
How old were you around that time?
I was about 6 or 7 when I got my first drum kit.
Wow.
And around the same time, I started getting into tabla. And my father was part of the Indian Academy of Performing Arts in New York State. So he was involved in putting a lot of concerts on.
Awesome.
So I got to see people like Shiv Kumar Sharma and Zakir Bhai and Allah Rakha and Sultan Khan and Pandit Jasraj and all these concerts when I was a kid. And not only did I get to see them, but I got to hang out with these guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, as a kid, there's a great picture of me sitting on Allah Rakha's lap while we're having dinner after one of his concerts.
Awesome.
When you look back and you remember that at that moment when you were a kid, that artist said something to you that was so inspiring that you wound up taking that journey.
Awesome. Where did that lead to? So what happened? When did your first performance happen?
My father is a singer. He would sing a lot of Marathi songs and old film songs and Launi and things like that. So I would accompany him at shows, and also we had jam sessions in the house. It was one of those things where we'd have a party and I'd be with the kids And then all of a sudden at 1 in the morning, I'd hear my dad calling my name, and I knew what that meant. That meant they had had enough whiskey, that tablas and harmoniums were coming out, and there was going to be a jam. You know?
Awesome.
So then I'd spend the next 2 hours jamming with the adults.
Awesome.
I did play tabla in a couple of songs in my high school band, but it was more of a novelty than it was actually a mixing of styles. So then I went to New York City, and that was probably the best decision I ever made in my life. I mean, for me, which was truly the first independent music scene that I think that I was able to immerse myself in. Meeting artists not only from New York, but from all over the world who had descended upon the city, who were figuring out new ways of expressing their own kind of cultural history, at the same time how that mixes with their urban life as New Yorkers. As a tabla player, I think that was really my calling card, where I was really able to, and I was asked to collaborate with a lot of different local musicians.
Right.
At that time, my intention was never to be a solo artist.
Okay.
I was always playing with different bands, meeting different musicians. But the idea of the collective kind of came about in that time for me. There was another movement that was happening as well, which was called the reverse engineering movement, which was basically playing electronic music with live musicians.
Nice.
And we would do nights every other week in New York. It would be kind of like a DJ night, and people would be dancing all over the club.
Awesome.
But it was to a live band.
Was this a struggle period? Was this like a struggle kind of a scene? Were you like making enough money that time?
No, it was definitely a struggle, for sure. But I think that when you're kind of living in a city where you're amongst other struggling artists,
Right.
it's kind of part of the gig. You
Right.
know? Well, I was, for years I was playing gigs for $20, $30, free dinner, free beer, things like that, a token amount of money. I mean, I don't think I really learned how to demand money and things like that until much later in my career, which I'm glad about, because I think I defined things for myself artistically first and created a value to that before I went out there and tried to sell it. By the time I was actually selling my music, I was a father.
Wow.
But like I said, I think if that would have happened in the beginning, I might have found myself compromising my art
True.
A lot earlier on. I think also with my collaborations with a lot of the artists from London, I started collaborating with Talvin Singh, people like EDF, State of Bengal. These were all artists that were happening at the time.
Right.
And through my collaborations, I met Bill Laswell.
That's how Tabla Beat Science happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tabla Beat Science happened a little bit after I'd met him.
Okay.
The first thing I did with him actually was to play drums on a remix for Sting.
Okay.
Which was amazing. For me, Sting is one of my heroes. Working with Bill, I already knew that he was an amazing person to work with, because he was so out of the box. And also people like Zakir and Trilok were working with him, who, to that point, were just heroes of mine. Untouchable people who I would, dream about for 6 months before I would see them at a concert, just be able to go backstage and touch their feet.
Wow. Were you ever skeptical of going and playing with these guys?
Oh yeah, I mean, skeptical. I was, I think that because I never had a teacher or a guru or anyone tell me that what I was doing at that particular moment was the right thing to do. There's always doubt, and you can't necessarily trust the audience. It's easy to bring something new to a brand new audience.
Right.
When someone like Zakir Bhai and Sultan Khan and Bill Laswell say, this is the new thing, then that's the new thing.
So it was a solo Zakir Hussain show.
No. It was the idea was to create a band that would encompass the sound that we created on the album.
Right.
So it was about bringing together electronica, old school hip hop, old school 80s kind of avant-garde jazz fusion stuff, and of course the entire universe of tabla. After that was the second phase, in my musical career, which was when I felt confident about what I had created myself. What we were talking about before in terms of going out there and getting paid as a musician, making a living as a musician, and also knowing what I had in my hand and what it was worth.
Right. Now, before we go there, the first album, what was that process like, and how was the response to that? In 6 Degrees, did they do a good job putting it out? Did lot of people buy it? Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, when you say a lot of people, I mean, it didn't go platinum.
Right.
It was not. I mean, that wasn't the goal.
Right.
I mean, the goal was to expose people.
Right.
When I started working on the album, half of it was already things that I had worked on over the last few years, which were just sitting on demo CDs,
right,
and that I was playing in DJ sets and stuff like that, that I kind of perfected for the album. And then the other half was finally being able to do collaborations with people who I had originally just been sampling. People like Sultan Khan being on the album, and meeting Ajay Prasanna, and working with like Mukesh Sharma, who's this fantastic sarod player, and then of course on the flip side, the musicians I was working with in New York. So they were on the album as well, and it was really, for me, it was kind of, your first album is always the one that you waited all your life to make. Right. So I really put a lot of everything that I had been through.
And it's a landmark album, like in the whole space of global fusion. I think that was one album which really stands out. Did Tabla Beat Science, doing the show, the live show, help the sales, help the CD, help you as...
of course it did. It definitely gave a whole new exposure to the music. And also I think for those who might have been on the fence about whether this is legitimate use of classical music, once they see a band with Zakir Hussain and Sultan Khan, then they're not questioning that.
Right.
When you're coming up, when you're creating your sound, when you're an independent band, what you're trying to figure out is, what am I worth out there? And it's not up to the industry to decide that. It's up to you to decide that. Because it's your conviction that's going to get you to the next place. If somebody comes and offers some sort of massive deal for something, it's only because they see some sort of quick payback from something you've done. Oh, you've created a cool song, it's got a nice hook, cool, let's give him some money. Let's make him feel like he's going to be a rock star. And then, in and out kind of situation. But that's dangerous. I think that if that's your pursuit as an artist, that becomes very dangerous.
Right.
And the gamble is a lot higher.
Right.
And if you can't afford to, I mean, that was for me, I was lucky because I couldn't afford to gamble. I had a daughter, I had a family.
Even I have a daughter.
Yeah, so it changes things a little bit.
Lots of things. Have you been following the Indian scene, Karsh, like the whole electronica boom in India?
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that? What do you think? Do you think it's going to survive? Do you think it's done its bit? Do you think we need something more innovative coming out of here?
I mean, I'm not so attracted to that. It's something that I've seen since I got into electronica. That's always been there. That kind of mainstream Friday, Saturday night, let's go out and party scene. Which is less artistic and more just about satisfying people with, what they expect.
Right.
And what I don't appreciate is the fact that the scene has forgotten who actually made the scene happen in the first place. Where bands like Jalebi Cartel or Arjun Vagle or the Pundits don't get the headlining slot.
Right.
And some young DJ from the States will come over here, take the lion's share of the fees, of the money, and take the headlining slot. And because he's a white guy with blonde hair, then he gets far more attention than the guys who actually created it, I think.
So Karsh, after Tabla Beat Science, after your first album, after the birth of your daughter, did things take off for you? Where did your journey go from there?
Well, I wouldn't really say take off. I think it's been a slow climb. Never was I kind of accepted into any kind of mainstream scene.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of the starting point of what has happened from then till now, in terms of my career as an international artist.
Right.
So the second album that I did, which came out 2 years after Realize, was Liberation. And
this is where you directed the Madras Chamber Orchestra and
I worked
Zakir Hussain.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, what I had done, so I had some kind of initial tracks that I had started working on, and then it was about asking for guests. And then while we were doing one of the Tabla Beat shows, I asked, kind of sheepishly asked Zakir Bhai if he would guest on a track. I mean, I've never seen anybody else kind of have Zakir Hussain as a guest, but I asked, and he said absolutely. So
Superb. And the whole space in India right now, where there's so many festivals happening, you've played so many weekenders. Any thoughts on that? How can we learn from some festivals abroad? What's lacking here? What's the good thing about this?
well, I think that, I mean, everything has to go in its phases. You know, I think India is going through a different kind of revolution in music right now, and I mean, I would liken it more to the time of Woodstock than what's going on in the States.
Okay.
You know,
How come?
Well, I think that because what was happening before Woodstock was very similar to what's been happening in India, which is the mainstream.
Right.
It was the mainstream, whether it's Bollywood or it was the Beatles.
Right.
And people like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and The Who, these guys were underground.
Right.
They didn't
Right.
have record deals. People didn't really know who they were. If you did, it's because you were in the know. And this is a place where, you know, people gathered and kind of declared that this is the new thing. This is the new scene. This is the revolution. Even though the guys who put it on, you know, they got an investment of $11 million and lost money, what they did culturally,
Yeah.
we still feel the effects today.
Right.
You know, which is what I think what's happening here, especially NH7. Is
Yeah.
To me, that's the Woodstock of India. That's where
Right.
kids get to come and feel a part of something. Not just I'm a fan of this band or
Right.
I'm a fan of that band.
Right.
I'm a part of this scene. I'm
Right.
a part of this movement.
Right.
You know?
And she said, hey, boy, I wanna take that train. The Indian summer sky, the unforgettable fire rise. Took all of my attention. I had every intention of walking away, but then I realized she's gonna love me today. That's what I say. She's gonna love me today. I said.
And Karsh, also with television, with superb shows such as Sound Tripping, how did that feel? How was that experience?
Well, I mean, I think that, I mean, for me,
Do you think it made you more of a household name here in India?
I think
lot more people.
anytime you do television, you gain such a bigger audience over
Right.
here. Otherwise, everything you're doing is on a local level.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, my critique in India of the music scene, besides that it was always kind of dominated by the Bollywood umbrella, was more that people never really got to see even what the Bollywood musicians were doing in order to create that sound. It was always a song and dance number, or it was
Right.
always the actors who were, you know, selling the
Right,
music.
right.
So you didn't get to see the composers, you didn't get to see the musicians. So shows like The Doerist and Sound Tripping and stuff like that allowed people to see what goes into a collaboration, what goes into the making of a song, what goes into the production. what kind of chemistry is needed between artists in order to be able to create something that's truly potent.
Right.
That's what these shows, I think, we're able to do. And by doing that, it's not just about informing the audience, but about inspiring people who are sitting at home like, okay, that's what I want to do. I think that oftentimes nowadays, because around the world we're inundated with these talent shows, with and it's just, it gives you a small little sliver of what it takes. It's not about going and auditioning for 3 judges and people calling in and deciding whether you have a good voice or whether you have a bad voice, or whether
That really sucks.
Whether you've rendered that whole Lata Mangeshkar song correctly or whether you haven't. Has absolutely nothing to do with your success as an artist.
Right.
And that's the wrong message that gets sent out.
You played White House last year. You've played some of the biggest venues, and coming from small clubs, underground scene, how does that feel? How is that transition like, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's always an honor, to play in a place like, White House. And it was very ironic, actually. It was at a time where I was doing so many things in India that I was considering moving here for a while.
Okay.
Because things had seemed to have simmered down in the States. And right at that moment, I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's a promoter in DC, and he said, "Are you available mid-July to do a gig at the White House?"
Wow.
I was like, "I will make myself available." And of course, that also answered my question as to, are things still happening in the States? I just got invited to play at the White House. So.
How was that like, man?
That was another one of the most incredible times. I think, I got to bring my family, so Anya and Milan both with me. We were, got to spend about 7-8 hours at the White House. I got to sit at this piano that Steinway had given the White House 100 years before.
Wow.
Like every musician who had been there had sat down. Stevie Wonder and Herbie Hancock just sat down on that piano. So it was amazing. It was a really incredible experience. And then, of course, a few hours later, sitting in the living room where usually the family would sit to watch Obama arrive in his helicopter. And then he was giving a speech, and in the middle of his speech, and it was funny because I was filming a bit of it from my phone, and then I realized, okay, and I turned it off, and then all of a sudden he introduced me, and he talked about me, and and in a way where
Please tell me about this.
basically what he said was he was like, there are different artists that represent this idea, this creed, and then all of a sudden he said, we have people like Karsh Kale who mixes his own heritage with really eclectic beats or something like that to create a sound of his own, which is distinctly his own, which is also distinctly American. And I was just like,
wow.
At the time I was trying to get my phone back on because I was like, nobody's gonna believe me that this happened. And then for me, growing up, probably one of my songwriting heroes is Sting.
You've done a song with him.
Yeah, so this was something that Anoushka had actually initiated because she had done a track on his album. And when we called him, he had just was in rehearsals for the Police tour, that reunion tour. So he was like, I'd love to, but I don't have time to write a song with you guys. So why don't you guys write a song?
Wow.
Which is kind of like, Shakespeare asking you to write a book for him. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And in the lyrics that I wrote, he only changed one word. He changed me to thee.
Oh, okay.
And then came out, of course, after he was done, and it gave me my lyrics back, and it had in red pen 80 over 100. And he had his glasses on, and he pulled his glasses down like a professor and looked at me, and I was looking at the paper, and I was like, 80 over 100? He was like, yeah, you get 100 for lyrics, you get 80 for spelling. So I actually got graded by Sting. Yeah, that was amazing.
Final question, Karsh. What would be your advice to kids who are watching this show? What would you want to tell them? Kids who want to be musicians, producers, DJs, what would be your advice for them? Bands even? My
advice would be, I think that your goal, whether you're a pure classical musician, whether you are an electronic musician, whether you're a fusion artist, in a metal band, hip hop, your job is to change the scene. Your job is to change the machinery, is to infiltrate the infrastructure and enhance it. Oftentimes the industry is dictated by those who are not creative, those who are controlling it based for other reasons, for money, for for commerce, and which is important. But at the same time, it's the artist's job. It's the artist's role to, as they say in America, stick it to the man.
Yeah.
Is to change the way that the way that the audience also perceives what it is that, I mean, it's happening now. You see it happening. This is what is happening right now. This whole indie movement is an example of that. Now take that to the next level.
Right.
Don't be satisfied with what's in front of you and say, okay, now my goal is in 10 years is to play at NH7. Your goal should be to create a whole new NH7. To create a whole new scene, to be able to, if you see 3 television shows that you like, make 10 more.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure, Karsh. It's been a superb season, and I couldn't have had a more beautiful guest on the last episode. Your cue.
To check out this interview, log on to PepsiMTVIndies.com.